was always the Jags. It's always the Jags. It's always the Jags. Always the Jags.
Welcome into Always the Jags, your number one podcast for all things Jacksonville, all things Jaguars, all things Duval. It's a beautiful Friday morning right after the first round of the NFL draft, and I have poured over these players and who's left. Also, you don't have to. Today's episode won't be that long, but I'm going to take a quick look at who's left, and I'm going to give you the perfect Jaguars mock draft with a little bit more realism now that we've seen how the board has fallen in the first round and who's potentially going to be there and who's potentially not going to be there. So first, let's get into some round one surprises. First of all, maybe I am biased here, but it does kind of peeve me a little bit that the Chiefs only needed to send the Browns a third and a fifth to move up 3 spots in the first round, when just last year the Browns made us send a first and a second to move up 3 spots in the first round. And again, I know it's the difference of moving from 9 to 6 is different from moving from 5 to 2. But a first and a second different, that's just, no, we shouldn't have had to pay as much. But either way, moving on. Some surprises in the first round. The big surprise was obviously the Ty Simpson from the Rams. No one really saw that coming. Everyone thought maybe the Jets might, and I guess the Rams must have believed that the Jets would take Ty Simpson, and so they ended up getting them for themselves as the heir apparent to Matthew Stafford. And then it looks like the Jets kind of took a player that a lot of people thought the Rams could get in Kenyon Sadiq, so those picks could have been flipped. I guess, it doesn't really affect our board much from the Jaguars' perspective, but everything else kind of fell the way that most people thought it would. Again, before free agency, Akeem Mesidor looked like he could fall to the second. Obviously did not happen. He went in the first to the Chargers, which is a good spot for him. Another player that we were looking at, Caleb Banks, because of his injury history, there was some buzz that he could fall to the second. And I wasn't believing it as much, but because I think that was maybe Pro Football Focus, which is the mock simulator that I use. But yeah, he did not fall into the second. He went to the Vikings at 17 because, again, he's one of the few defensive tackles in this draft that have a lot of pass rushing juice. Now, there's a lot of teams. Fortunately for us, there's still a lot of good edge players on the board. There's a lot of good designated edge rushers who may struggle to set the edge in the run game, but are great at getting to the quarterback in the pass rush game, which is what we need. And there's a lot of run stuffing defensive tackles left, and there's a lot of teams who need defensive tackles who can stop the run. And so we're looking for defensive tackles who can get to the quarterback, and so that all works out in our favor. So I was also kind of surprised that the Cardinals ended up going with Jeremiah Love at running back and passing on Arvell Reese. I guess we'll see. I don't know if you pass on a guy like Arvell Reese in order to take a running back. Like for Saquon Barkley, maybe back in the day when the Giants took him at number 2, but I guess we'll see. That was the move that the Cardinals decided to make. Obviously, they had a lot of running back issues last year, and maybe that'll take some pressure off of whoever's quarterbacking for them. Not Jacoby Myers. That's our wide receiver. Jacoby Brissett, yes. Maybe that'll take some pressure off him, but I guess we'll see. But without further ado, like I said, I'm going to move through this mock draft fairly quickly, and then we'll talk a little bit about some of the news surrounding the Jaguars and all that buzz. So first, number 56 overall, Mason Thomas, edge out of Oklahoma. In this perfect mock draft simulator that I have up, he happened to fall to us at 56, and I could not be happier. Gabe Jukas, TJ Parker probably won't fall there. Cassius Howell, Malachi Lawrence has already gone in the first round. Any of those 3 guys, if they fall to us here at 56, that's the guy that you got to go up and take. Now, if there starts to be a run on edge players, Gladstone might need to move up because there's a huge drop-off after those guys. After those guys, you have guys like Joseph Josephs and people like that, but a lot of them are what I call like Trayvon Walker clones, where they're good at setting the edge in the run game, but they struggle with their pass rush arsenal getting to the quarterback. The players that I just mentioned have the exact opposite issue. They struggle with setting the edge in the run game, but they are excellent at getting to the quarterback, and we need designated pass rushers. So, got to make sure we get at least Mason Thomas here. If we need to move up, James Gladstone has the arsenal to do so. Hopefully we don't, though, because there's a lot of players that I still want to take with this treasure trove of picks that we have. But at 56, I am taking Mason Thomas. Now, there is a small chance that what we really need right here in the second round is a run on wide receivers. That's what we need. We need somebody to get anxious and need a wide receiver and to take one here and to kind of, because there's a lot of wide receivers who can kind of be like early second, late second. If we can get a run on wide receivers going, because that's the one place where the Jaguars are set, it can push some of these defensive prospects down to us because that's what we're going to be looking for. The only other player I would consider taking here, especially now that Caleb Banks is gone, is if Jacob Rodriguez falls somehow because of a run on wide receivers, I would definitely take him here at 56. Would I take him over Mason Thomas? That would be hard to decide, or any of those edge players. But I honestly think I would because I think he and a couple other linebackers have really great skills and coverage, but he might be the linebacker with the best coverage skills. And I think you would plug him, play him right next to Foye Luakon, and we probably barely noticed a drop off from Devin Lloyd, especially because, again, Jacob Rodriguez is so good in coverage. One of the best linebackers of this entire draft who can do that. So that would be my consideration here. I don't think I would trade up for him because the cost is going to be too high. It would just kind of be like, if he falls, great, steal. Maybe if we're at 50 and nobody's gotten him yet, I see if somebody wants to let me go up 6 spots to get him, because that would be a plug-and-play solution. And again, there are other designated edge rushers that we can find in the draft, but there's only so many coverage linebackers, and he would definitely be the best one. Next, moving on to pick number 81. Whether or not Jacob Rodriguez falls to us or not, this pick remains the same. And again, maybe we have to move up a couple of spots. It kind of depends on how the board is flowing. Hopefully, again, we see a run on wide receivers. That helps us out the most. But I'll be taking Grayson Halton, the defensive tackle out of Oklahoma. And honestly, I would probably take Grayson Halton over Lee Hunter, over some of the other guys that are left. I can't think of them off the top of my head, but I know Lee Hunter is still on the board, because Lee Hunter is known for his run stuffing prowess, but Grayson Halton has shown some really, really exciting pass rush disruption. And so, you can almost kind of get him and use him as a designated defensive tackle pass rusher. So on passing downs, like let's say we got Mason Thomas, let Mason Thomas go on the outside, move Trayvon Walker in, throw in Grayson Halton in the middle, and Josh Hines Allen, and just let these rookies focus on getting to the quarterback. He's got pass rush moves and a lot of things like that, and that's the kind of people that we're looking for, guys that are ready to step in, who don't need to work on their pass rush arsenal and just step in and then slowly work on like their run game prowess so they can be a more complete player. But let's get some guys who can really rush the passer right now, and be in that designated role because we can already stop the run. So Grayson Halton is the pick at 81, no matter how the board falls. Now this one, again, if it starts looking like defensive tackles are falling, this one is where I'm much more comfortable sending a few more picks to move up to get him because, again, the fall off after Grayson Halton is large. There's not really another guy like him in this draft for a long time. At least that would make sense on the spot. So definitely, if you need to move up to get him, James Gladstone, you make that happen. Next, at number 88, it's interesting how many of these boards, like where the different players are ranked, because in other boards, this player is like I could get him 40 spots below, or in some mocks, I have to take him here, otherwise I miss him completely. So I would be taking Kyle Lewis, the linebacker out of Pittsburgh. Reason why I like Kyle Lewis, I think he's the second best coverage linebacker in this draft. You could argue that like he's as good as Jacob Rodriguez, maybe, but he definitely has some of the best coverage skills out of any linebacker in this draft. He can blitz. He can. I mean, his blitz game isn't as strong as like his coverage because he's one of those almost hybrid. He's almost one of those hybrid players who can play safety as well. And I like that too because if we get Kyle Lewis here at linebacker, knowing that he can play safety, not only will that help him play linebacker better, but we can even move him into the safety rotation as well as maybe like a box safety. Or, on obvious passing down, like on rundowns, have Ventrell Miller in there and maybe have Kyle Lewis play some safety depending on how good he gets. And then when it comes to obvious passing downs, move Ventrell Miller up and let Kyle Lewis patrol the middle. But again, I really would prefer Kyle Lewis to play linebacker because I want him to be able to cover those short routes, those short intermediate zones. So that way, on 1st and 10, everybody loves a quick pass on 1st and 10 so you can get to 1st and 5. Now, there's no obvious, so you can get to 2nd and 5. Now there's no obvious passing or running play, right? Because you picked up 5 yards. Now, is it going to be pass? Is it going to be run? So it's better to have him on the field so he can stop those intermediate routes and sit on those. Partially why I like Jacob Rodriguez. But again, if he doesn't fall to us at 56, which probably won't happen, we will be taking Kyle Lewis right here at 88, and he can step into play that coverage role. Now, between him and Ventrell Miller, would you put Ventrell Miller on again if you know it's going to be a running play? I think he's probably better against the run than Kyle Lewis would be. But we don't struggle against the run right now. I mean, taking Devin Lloyd out of the equation does kind of muddy it a little bit because he did help our run defense. But I think overall, getting a coverage linebacker is what we want. So people have suggested Anthony Hill Jr., a couple other guys. The only other linebacker I would consider, and even at this spot, I'd be okay with taking him, is Deontay Lawson because he's also got coverage skills. But other than that, none of those other linebackers I'm really taking because a lot of them struggle in coverage, and I don't want the opposing team's wide receivers to just run crossers on us all day because that's what's going to happen if you got a linebacker who's not that great in coverage. Can't do that against Kyle Lewis. Now he's not the biggest player, so it may be tough. Like if you got a barreling running back like Derrick Henry, can he take Derrick Henry down 1-on-1? I guess we'll see, but I still like him here, and I still like taking him at 88 because again, he gives us that hybrid flexibility, and mainly it's because of his coverage skills and instincts. Next, we have Brian Parker at pick number 100, offensive center out of Duke. I like him because he's played every position along the offensive line. My mock draft grader really didn't like me taking him here. I guess because they don't feel like it's much of a need for the Jaguars. I don't really know because he was ranked as like number 106 as in prospects, and they graded him a D for me taking him at 100. I don't know. Someone needs to explain it to me because that don't really make sense why they hate it so much. But either way, I'm a fan of it. He can play all positions along the offensive line, and he can play center. And I think that's important when you take a guy who can play all positions. It'd be better if that person can also play center because not almost like every center can play guard or tackle, or like a lot of centers can play guard and tackle, but not every guard or tackle can play center, and not every guard and tackle who's played all spots along the line can even play center because center involves getting a lot of people lined up and it involves snapping the ball, which is not as easy as it sounds because you got to make sure it gets to the quarterback's hands. How many times have we seen plays where the snap is off and it goes above the quarterback's head? It's a fumble, sack fumble, whatever it is. Like that can seriously mess up a drive, especially depending on where you are. Either take points off the board for you or put points on the board for the other team. So having someone who's versatile like that, we're really building up our offensive line depth, and I love it. And it kind of will end up making, if Jake Slaughter is here at 100 as well, I will say I'm okay with taking him. I wouldn't take him at 88 and potentially miss out on Kyle Lewis. That's not a good decision. But nor would I take him at 81. But if Jake Slaughter is here at 100, I would consider taking him. To me, he's about even with Brian Parker because, again, Parker can be a long-term center or guard for us. And we'll see, after this season, because, again, we'll probably shed a lot of contracts from guys now that we've built up the depth. Love Robert Hainsey, but he probably won't be here. Don't know about Patrick McCarry yet. It's probably the same with Ezra Cleveland. So if we have Wyatt Milam, Jonah Monheim, and Brian Parker Jr., all competing to be our starting interior, or maybe they all become our starting interior, that works really well in our favor. And that would enable us to get rid of some of those contracts and let our guys on their rookie contracts step up to give us more freedom and flexibility to extend to guys like Parker Washington and Brenton Strange. So, and this is a good spot to take him as well because he could be a future starter. And I know we didn't need offensive line depth as much now that we're keeping Walker Little. But again, if we take Brian Parker Jr., that could end up making Walker Little expendable, depending on if we want to wait to the trade deadline or after the draft to move him and save a little bit more money on the cap. Moving on to pick number 124, I'm taking Dalen Bentley out of Utah. And again, on this mock draft, I've seen Bentley go as high as 88 or 100. And I've seen him go and I haven't really seen him go lower than 124. It usually doesn't make it past like 130 because the tight end run really kind of starts in the third round and into the fourth. And so here we're in the fourth round, and we're still fortunate enough to get him. I passed over a couple other tight end prospects just to nab him simply because he's the best blocker. If you've heard my channel, you've heard me talk about it before. He is a tenacious, nasty blocker, and I love him in Liam Cohen's offense. He's going to be our tight end too, right behind Brenton Strange. Maybe we'll run. It's not replacing Brenton Strange, right? But maybe we'll be able to run a lot of two tight end sets because he also can catch. He had 645 yards last year at Utah. So, and in their run heavy offense, he knows exactly what to do, mauling guys and pushing them into the dirt. This is our guy, Dalen Bentley. Out of all the tight end prospects, honestly, the only one I would have taken over him is Kenyon Sadiq. So we wait to the 4th round and we snatch him up. Again, if he's the only tight end on the board and it's 115 and we're at 124 and he's the only tight end left, I would consider moving up to make sure that we get him. Oscar Delp is a guy that we could take instead of him who kind of has similar profile, who can block as well. But guys like Eli Stowers, he can't block. He's a weapon, but he can't block. And if you can't block as a tight end, you're not going to fit with Liam Cohen's offense. So Sam Roush is another guy who could maybe be a fit here. I still like Dalen Bentley more than them. And I think they might end up going before Dalen Bentley as well because their catching prowess might seem like it's a little bit higher. But the level of production that he gave Utah and plus the blocking skills that he's already put on tape makes it a slam dunk for me. 164, I'm taking Cole Payton, quarterback out of North Dakota State once again. Again, I really like the idea of developing a quarterback behind Trevor Lawrence and even someone who can have some Taysom Hill-like flexibility. I don't really think we need to take another running back, but by taking Cole Payton, we kind of take another running back, if that makes sense. We almost take another, because again, he's shown the ability to kind of do that gadget stuff, so we can take him as like a Taysom Hill-like guy who maybe if we're on the goal line, put Cole Payton in. And is he going to run for it, or is he going to throw alley-oop over there to one of our big receivers like Tim Patrick? Who knows? Just another way to kind of keep the defense off kilter. Like I said, I've talked about it before about why I like Cole Payton, and I do kind of like these. I do like taking positions that allow you to kind of address multiple needs at once. Like, again, Kyle Lewis, linebacker, and he could be a backup safety as well if we need to. I want him to primarily be linebacker, but if we lose safeties, worst comes to worst, I know we could probably put him in at safety and be fine, you know? Same thing kind of here with Cole Payton. Like, I think we have 4 running backs on the roster. I think we're good. But if a running back does go down, we could activate. We could keep 3 quarterbacks on the roster, first of all, because we do have an extra spot, thanks to Travis Hunter. We can keep 3 quarterbacks on the roster, and with Cole Payton, you could easily have him in there on some running plays. He can block a little bit too, which is pretty cool. But it's kind of like having a fullback / tight end / running back / it's a Taysom Hill pick, and I think he can develop. And can he become a much better? That can become like a serviceable backup quarterback behind Trevor Lawrence? We'll see. And that's the question, because like Taysom Hill never was like the backup to Drew Brees. They always kind of had to have someone else, like Jameson Winston or someone else. So they always kind of kept 3 quarterbacks. So it depends on how Liam Cohen wants to do it. But I think having a gadget guy can give you more creativity than necessarily takes away from the offense. One thing I will mention, because I do say that we have enough running backs on the roster, if Cole Payton is not available at this spot and a player like Nicholas Singleton is available, the running back from Penn State, I don't mind him in the spot. And if James Gloucester wants to take him over Cole Payton, that's fine as well. He's very fast, so he kind of fits that Achian mold of just being very fast and a great guy in the screen game. Again, Bayshaw Tootin is explosive, and LaQuinn Allen is our pickup blitzes, work in the screen game kind of guy. So we kind of already have those 2 roles set pretty well. So I think I would rather have a guy like Cole Payton who gives me a little bit more than like a 3rd string running back. But if Nicholas Singleton is available, I would take him. I don't know if I'd like pick up an extra pick to try to take him and like move back if there's an opportunity, because I think most of these other players are too important. But if there is, or that kind of plays out that way, I'd be fine with that. Next, at pick number 166, we've got Max Llewellyn, the edge out of Iowa State. Now, in a lot of other mock drafts, Kieran Crawford is here as well, and I probably would take him over, even in our live mock draft. I took Max Llewellyn over Kieran Crawford. Don't know why I did that. Kieran Crawford is definitely a better prospect. But in this case, Kieran Crawford went I think he went at like 85. So again, this is the consensus board instead of the PFF board, which is probably a little bit more accurate to where teams are thinking that players will go. But as far as Max Llewellyn, again, designated pass rusher mold. I want him to compete with Mason Thomas. If he can make the roster, great. Now we got a backup for Josh Hines Allen, who's also a designated pass rusher. If he doesn't, that's fine. Another team will end up picking him up if he's just not as good as the guys that we already have. But I want him to compete to be on the roster. And my ideal edge setup, if all these guys reach their potential, I think we can move Danny Strigow to linebacker, kind of the way Dennis Kardec can kind of play edge and linebacker. So then we would keep 5 edge players: Josh Hines Allen, Trayvon Walker, Mason Thomas, Max Llewellyn, and BJ Green, our undrafted rookie from last year. Because BJ Green outplayed the veterans that we brought in Dewan Smoot and Emmanuel Ogba. So if we want to bring one of those veterans back, that's fine. But I think they got outplayed by BJ Green, and I think Max Llewellyn fits the need as far as designated pass rusher goes. And I think BJ Green has also shown that he can be pretty effective against the run. So he'd probably be the primary backup to Josh Hines Allen and Trayvon Walker. And then again, we have some flexibility because on our linebacker side, if we put Danny Strigow officially as a linebacker, we can also put him in at the edge position if need be. Same with Dennis Gardeck, who we ended up retaining. Now we move on to pick 203. We are in the, I believe those last 2 picks were 5th rounders, Cole Payton and Max Llewellyn. So now we're in the 6th round, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm going to take Landon Robinson out of Navy at pick number 203, defensive tackle. This pick makes me leap for joy because usually in a lot of other mocks, Landon Robinson is up there at 124. So usually I have to pick between taking him or Dalen Bentley, or I have to take Dalen Bentley at 100, Landon Robinson at 124, and then I got to wait until this spot to address our offensive line depth if I still want to come away with Cole Payton or Max Llewellyn. So getting Landon Robinson here at number 203 is a steal. Just absolutely. He's flashed so much pass rushing juice. And again, he's one of those few defensive tackles that does it. I feel like for certain that he would definitely make the roster if we got him, especially with our trading Mason Smith for, I cannot pronounce his name nor can I remember it right now. But I feel like he's a guy that could Ruke or Horo. We traded Mason Smith for Ruke or Horo. So I think Landon Robinson can definitely, if we had kept Mason Smith, I thought Landon Robinson was a guy that could push Mason Smith, because I already thought Grayson Halton would make the roster over Mason Smith, but Landon Robinson could have been a guy that pushes him. But now we don't have Mason Thomas, but we still get Landon Robinson here at 203. So that's why I call this the perfect mock draft, because we're able to get a potential starter in the 3rd round for our offensive line depth, and we still come away with, in my opinion, 2 of the best pocket pushing, pass rushing defensive tackles in this draft. Now, they're not the best pocket pushing defensive tackle. They're one of the best. So again, is he as good at stopping the run? He can probably be better, but I don't really need him for that right now. And I feel like I can teach him that and let him grow later on in the system. And again, he is our 5th defensive tackle in the scenario. Because again, if I'm looking at the roster, who we want to keep, I'm thinking Devon Hamilton, Ruke Horo. I butchered that so badly. I deeply apologize. Eric Armstead will probably stick around. Grayson Halton, and then Landon Robinson rounds out that spot. And those are our 5 defensive tackles. If there's a way we can get Calais Campbell in there, I would not be mad about it. But either way, I want him to compete, try to make the roster, see if he can beat out guys like Matt Dickerson or Austin Johnson, which I think he can. And if he can really flash that pass rush skill that we saw at Navy. Next, at pick number 233, in a lot of mock drafts, in some mock drafts, he didn't even get drafted. In some of them that I did, some of them I could have I waited to take him to 245 and he was available. Here, I think it's much more likely at 233 that we end up nabbing him, and that's CJ Daniels. And when I first started doing mocks, he's been falling on the boards, which is a little bit concerning, right? Because I used to have to take him at 166, and then I could get him at 203. Now he's fallen all the way to 233, right? But he's a big, acrobatic, high point wide receiver who's got a big box frame and has a 1,000-yard season under his belt. We could do worse, right? And so I think taking him at 233 is worth the risk. Again, kind of remember to fill out our wide receiver room because we still have 4 starting wide receivers. So it's not like he has to come in and complete right away. Use him as a rotational piece. I like him in the red zone. You've already heard me sing his praises. At 240, here we're taking Fernando Carmona Jr., the guard from Alabama. Again, crazy that he was available. Um, and yeah, this is another guy where if it comes to roster cut down, if he's able to make it and make Walker Little expendable, which is where I probably think any Walker Little trade would happen, um, I'm totally for it. And could he end up being a starter at guard in the future? Maybe, especially for getting someone in the 7th round. That would be incredible. Like again, Jonah Monheim, getting him in the 7th round, that would be incredible. But again, it gives us a lot of depth and ability to move guys around if need be. So like, let's say that we let Robert Hainsey go, but Jonah Monheim isn't quite able to hold up at center. Then we can put in Brian Parker. Same thing with Wyatt Milam. Maybe let Fernando Carmona Jr. try. Or, like I said, depending on how it shakes out, maybe Fernando Carmona is good enough to be one of our guards and we can move Wyatt Milam to right tackle because he's played that before. And then now we have um, Milam, Carmona, Parker starting at guard, and Fernanda and Jonah Monheim starting at center as our starting offensive line, and then continue to replenish that every single draft with different guys. So again, this is building up the depth. So I think right now, again, if I'm looking at the offensive tackle room, starters: Cole Van Lannon, Ezra Cleveland, Robert Hainsey, Patrick McCarry, and Anton Harrison. Probably going to have an extension for Anton Harrison at some point soon, but those are the starters that are all set. And then we already have Jonah Monham, Wyatt Milam, Walker Little. And here I'd be adding, so that's 8 total. Here I'd be adding 2 more players in Brian Parker and Fernando Carmona Jr. So now we've got 10 players total on the offensive line, which I think I'm fine with. We can keep 10. That's okay. But again, if it makes Walker Little expendable, I'm also okay with us shipping him out as well. Moving on to the last pick, number 245, I took Skylar Thomas out of Oregon State. Great special teams player. I actually passed on a couple of other safeties for him. Cole Wisniewski, a couple other guys. Cole Wisniewski. Um, I think there's a lot less issues with Skylar Thomas. I think like he's only limited by his own physical profile. You know what I mean? So like it doesn't like sometimes he has lapses in coverage and things like that. But again, we're not really drafting him to be a starter. We're drafting him to be a special teamer, drafting him to compete. If he makes the roster, great. I think there's a good chance that he could. Maybe he could just come in and replace Andrew Wingard. If I look at the safety room, probably want to keep 5. Anthony Campanelli does like a lot of 3 safety sets, so we do have to make sure that we've got a guy who can come in. Antonio Johnson, definitely want to see Caleb Ransall, the rookie that we took from last year, on the field, and Eric Murray are probably those top 3 guys who are going to rotate in and out, depending on the situation. And then we'll have Skylar Thomas and Ryan Lane, our 6th-round pick from last year, behind them. In theory, like I said, if Skylar Thomas ends up making the roster. So we'll see. Like I said, he probably ends up being a core special teamer, and we'll see exactly what he can do on the roster as a safety. So there is my perfect, absolutely perfect Jaguars mock draft. I got graded a B for this. I'm gonna give it an A plus because I'm very, very, very happy with it. If James Gladstone came away with anything, again, it doesn't have to be exactly this. Like this is perfect, but if he came away with anything similar, like edge, a good designated pass rusher at 56, it's got to be Grayson Halton at 81. Unfortunately, there's nobody else, but Deontay Lawson or Kyle Lewis is okay at 88. Again, Jake Slaughter, Brian Parker. There's a couple other Drew Shelton. There's a couple other tackle prospects or versatile offensive line prospects I'd be okay with. Definitely prefer Dalen Bentley over anyone else. If Oscar Delpa's in there, that's okay. Again, Cole Payton or that running back, either one is fine. Love Max Wellen at 166, or again, another edge-setting run. Romello Height and Kieran Crawford likely won't be here, so Max Wellen is probably the last one who will be available to take there. Again, not many players like Landon Robinson. Hopefully we can get him at 203. And like I said, 233, CJ Daniels, get that offensive line depth with Fernando Carmona. Skylar Thomas, get a special teamer on for the last pick. So let me know your thoughts about this mock draft. I absolutely love it, obviously, because I did it. And I think it'll probably be pretty similar to the idea that I think James Gladstone is feeling. A lot of people have us taking a safety though earlier, like in the third round or the fourth round. I don't think I love that. I don't think we need to address safety that much. And again, that's why I kind of like Kyle Lewis, because it's like we can address linebacker and safety at the same time. Because a lot of safeties aren't big enough to play linebacker, and Kyle Lewis is. And so I think that'll fit the mold for us. So let me know your thoughts on this draft. And don't ever forget, it was always the Jags. Thank you so much for listening or watching. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button so you never miss out on any videos about the Jaguars from my channel. Check out some of these other videos that I'm sure you'll be interested in. And again, never forget, it was always the Jags.